The Gauteng High Court has also suspended the appointment of NSFAS Administrator Professor Hlengani Mathebula and ordered the return of the scheme's board pending a final review of the matter. Now, for more on the funding crisis, the court ruling and the way forward for NSFAS, we speak to Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training, Tebogo Letsie. Tebogo, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, first of all, Tebogo, the High Court didn't just suspend Professor Mathebula. It found the minister failed to properly consult your committee's own oversight partner, the NSFAS board, and ignored adverse findings from the Nugent Commission. Now, as the person who oversees the department in Parliament, were you consulted before this appointment?
Good morning to yourself, good morning to the viewers of SABC, and thanks for having us. I think it is important to clarify that as the Portfolio Committee, we were not consulted when the minister put the NSFAS under administration on the 4th of May. We did call the minister to a meeting, which the meeting set on the 29th of May, where the process that the minister was expected to follow was questioned by members of the committee. We did indicate that we're not satisfied with the responses that they gave, and the court indeed vilified us because we believe that the process was not followed to the letter.
Now, Judge Labuskaghni, described aspects of Mathebula's conduct as bizarre and directly referenced his SARS history. Now, given that history was publicly known, how did it pass whatever vetting process that the minister had used? And should Parliament now summon the minister to explain that process?
Well, we did speak to that with the minister. The minister indicated to us that he was briefed by Prof. Mathebula that he was not charged after the Nugent Commission, a point which the court, as you correctly stated, believes that it was not true. It felt, in fact, the judgment makes scathing points in it, indicating about the credibility of Prof. Mathebula. So to answer your second question, whether we should bring the minister to explain, I think members of the Portfolio Committee, they've already written to me on Friday indicating that we must bring the minister, but the minister's office had released a statement indicating that they are studying the judgment, and that will then determine their course of action. So we will wait for them to decide what is it that they are going to do as a ministry, and then we will also decide to bring them back, because we don't want to bring them and then 2 days after we've met with them, they then take a decision to whether accept or challenge the decision in court, and then we must call them again. So we are going to wait for them to take a decision, and then we'll bring them to Parliament.
Now, the court found the remaining NSFAS board was in fact quorate, as it were, directly contradicting the minister's justification for dissolving it. So if the legal basis for administration was flawed from the very start, was the entire disruption to NSFAS this year, mid-academic year, with the students' funding on the line, was that avoidable? Well,
we believe it was avoidable. In fact, in that meeting that we had with the minister on the 29th of May, we had indicated that both the minister and the department in February and March, they would have praised the progress being made by NSFAS itself under the same board that the minister put in under administration on the 4th of May. And we felt that that was a drastic step. I mean, the minister had indicated to us in the meeting that he's putting NSFAS under administration because they did not meet the quorum, and it's a point that ourselves as members of Parliament did not agree with the minister, because the NSFAS Act Section 5 that speaks about the composition of the board indicates that the board of NSFAS has or must have 13 members, and if you have 7, even if you are to use a 50% plus 1 a general rule of quorum, that was met, but NSFAS Act determines what is a quorum of NSFAS, and it says obviously majority of members must be the meeting, so 7 will be majority out of 13, but it also says at least 3 members of those who are present must be members of EXCO, and the NSFAS indicated to us in that meeting that at least 3 members of EXCO were there. So we then indicated to the minister in that meeting that the issue of quorum then falls away. The second issue that was raised as a reason to put NSFAS under administration by the minister would have been the matter of the AG's report. And we also in that meeting indicated that we don't think that the reason is going to stand in court because that's not an audit report, where this NSFAS board was active. It was the previous administrator who would have received those adverse findings from the AG, and we felt when the court made a determination on Friday, the court vilified and clarified that indeed you can't punish the NSFAS board over that audit opinion, even when it was not, sanctioned, or it was not under their leadership when that thing happened. So already on the 29th of May, in our meeting with the minister, what indicated we don't think they have a strong case. We felt that they are going to struggle to win, that court case, and the court indicated that we were correct.
And Minister Manamela's own legal team reportedly flagged errors in his case before he replaced him. Did your committee perhaps have any visibility whatsoever into that internal breakdown? And does it suggest the decision to place NSFAS under administration was driven by politics rather than sound legal or financial judgment?
Well, we were not aware. I mean, we were reading in the newspapers today that the initial team that the minister had appointed were then replaced after they've, as the newspaper article says, after they flagged that the legal case is not strong. We're not aware of that. It's some of the things that we will ask the minister when they appear, when we call them. Look, it might not have been politics per se that would have driven the minister's decision, but the case generally was a bit weak, and it's a point that we've made as the portfolio committee that we do not believe that the minister would have taken a sound decision to place NSFAS under administration, including after him, the department, and AG would have praised the board for following up on the audit problems that were there in previous years. So we felt that it was really unnecessary for the minister to put NSFAS under administration. We did put it to him on the 29th of May meeting if he was driven by politics, and he said no, it was not driven by politics. It was from the advice that he would have gotten.
Now, the minister also told your committee that the shortfall has actually grown from 2.5 billion rand in 2018 to 15 billion rand now. So at what point does a growing gap become, in your words, evidence that the fee-free higher education as currently designed is simply not sustainable?
We have made a point, not even only this year, I mean in previous years that the current NSFAS or the current model at NSFAS is not sustainable for a number of reasons, which I won't go to because there are really a number of them. In fact, the president, when opening Parliament in this year, he did indicate that he expects the Minister of Higher Education to bring a comprehensive, sustainable funding model of NSFAS. So we're expecting the minister to present that to cabinet soon, and then once that has been done, we'll then bring him to Parliament to come and explain the same to us. How is that sustainable funding model going to look like? But we have made a point long time ago that in its current form, NSFAS might collapse, and if it collapses, all our institutions are going to collapse. So it's in the best interest of South Africa, it's in the best interest of the education, higher education system, that NSFAS is sustainable. The minister present that funding, comprehensive funding model as a matter of urgency, so that from next year we don't have this funding shortfalls. Like I said, they are, caused by many other things. The exorbitant fees of student accommodation that universities charge. There are, gaps in tuition fees, and there are a number of reasons, and corruption. But I must indicate, I think, and corruption as well, where people just do as they please with that institution.
And you've previously called the NSFAS too big to fail. Now, given this shortfall, is that still true? Or is it now too expensive to keep funding in its current form without structural reform?
No, NSFAS is too big, too important to fail. We can't allow it to fail. It is 15 billion. I mean, this 15 billion, we must not look at it as a number. We must indicate that these are fees that are owed to universities, and if they are not paid, universities might struggle to, to fulfill their financial obligations. So, like I said, the answer here is a comprehensive, sustainable funding model of NSFAS.
Now, universities account for the overwhelming majority of that 15 billion rand gap. So has the department given your committee a credible breakdown, as it were, of how much of that is, is genuine underfunding versus the poor reconciliation and administrative failure between NSFAS and institutions?
We learned about this, I think, about a week or two ago. And in our meeting with NSFAS on Wednesday, the 12th of August, we traversed this point. And in my letter to them on Friday, I wrote and I said they must give us a breakdown of which institution is owed to what, how much for what. So we are expecting them, I think, in 7 days, so next week, Friday, to give us a breakdown of which institution is owed how much and for what. And then from that, we can even share that information with yourself as soon as we receive it. But we don't have it at the moment. It's NSFAS that in their slide told us that they owe universities. In fact, they had indicated that they had not paid tuition fees to institutions for the past 4 months.
Now, student debt tied to NSFAS-funded students alone stands at 29 billion rand, with certificates being withheld from over 165,000 students. So you call this worrying in May. 3 months on, has anything actually changed, or are we simply watching the same crisis compound?
We did indicate in that meeting that we will bring a private members bill to Parliament to resolve the issue of withholding of certificates. It's something, the document that we're still busy with. It must go through legal, it must go through a number of processes for it to stand the test of time. But in essence, what we are looking to do there is that we do understand why universities withhold certificates of graduates who do owe, because they must protect themselves, try and recoup as much as possible from the monies. In fact, you are only talking about the 29 or so million owed by NSFAS funded students. There is another 29 billion of self-funded students. So the total is around 58 billion that is owed to universities. So we are trying to put together that document. But I think we need to resolve this matter of NSFAS students owing, not being allowed to graduate. What causes that? What causes that is universities normally, NSFAS says, I'm paying a maximum of 5,200 per month per room, and then universities charge as much as 9,000, 10,000 per bed, which we don't think that is sustainable. And that is why we called a colloquium on the 28th of August, including
Mr. Letsie,
else in the
we're out of time, unfortunately, but just a quick question. The fact that institutions are sitting with 12 billion rand in irrecoverable debt, some of it dating back to 2017, whose failure is that? Is it NSFAS's failure? Is it the university's failure, or even the department's failure? And why has it taken nearly a decade to surface as a crisis?
Well, we believe that all those people that you've mentioned, they have a role to play, and all of them must apportion the blame to themselves. Because if you keep certificates of students, they are likely not going to get employed anyway, because when you look at the adverts, even at SABC, when you advertise, you'd say that you must your CV must be accompanied by the certificates of the qualifications that you need, and you also put a disclaimer there to say if those attachment or certificates are not attached, then we must, or the applicant must consider the application unsuccessful. I mean, so universities themselves keeping those certificates would have meant that those people, those graduates, will not find employment, and if they can't find employment, they'll not be able to pay. But the fact that they are sitting at 12 billion irrecoverable debt, it's exactly what we told them. We said it's a strategy that has not worked. You keeping certificates, maybe take a chance. I mean, if point A does not, or strategy A does not work, you go to strategy B. In fact, Einstein himself indicates that insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We don't think keeping of certificates is going to resolve anybody's problem. Students are not going, or graduates are not going to find employment. If they can't find employment, that irrecoverable debt is going to increase to 100 billion in few years. So it's a strategy that won't work. And that is why we're proposing something different. Obviously, we must take it to, we believe that it must be a collaboration between the Department of Higher Education, National Treasury, SARS, institutions, in order for us to clear the backlog. And those 170 or so thousand certificates that you spoke about, if we can release them today, in a few years, you'll see that the debt that we have will probably be halved, or slashed by half. Yeah, so we believe that there must be different strategies that are employed here.
All right, Mr. Tebogo Letsie, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.